Wide receiver is such a volatile position, especially now that it looks like the top of our drafts are going to be stacked with a large number of running backs where over the past couple of years, wide receivers have been really heavy in the early part of drafts. Now it looks like the first 5, 6, maybe even 7 picks might be a running back, but it's more important than ever to really nail your wide receiver pick. So let's start with my top 10. And I'm going to go number 10, Julian Edelman, which might be a surprise to a lot of people because, of course, if you've ever seen Tom Brady's numbers without Rob Gronkowski, they take a significant hit, which stands to reason. Rob Gronkowski, one of the best players in NFL history, so that kind of stuff will happen. Over the last couple of years, they've managed it a little bit better than they did earlier in his career, but still it's a significant drop-off. It's kind of like when Michael Scott left the office. Those past couple of seasons were still pretty good. I think Robert California was kind of an underrated superstar, but obviously not as good as when, Michael Scott was there, or Steve Carell, if you want to go by his real name. Similarly, that's what's going on with Gronk and the Patriots. Still at the top of their game, but still they would be better if he was there. The only person who has thrived without Rob Gronkowski has been Julian Edelman, who has averaged close to 12 targets per game, close to 8 receptions per game set in contest without Rob Gronkowski. And I understand that he's battling some injuries right now, and the Patriots kind of moved more towards running the football towards the end of last season. But I'm pretty confident in Julian Edelman. At the end of the year, he's going to be a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. Now, the good news is you can probably wait a round or two. I wouldn't get too cute, but you can still wait a round or two before you dive in with Julian. But he is my number 10 guy. Number 9, Keenan Allen. You might or might not know this, but Keenan Allen and I had a fun little exchange on the Twitter last year. I said that Keenan Allen was going to struggle at Pittsburgh because they had been shutting down receivers, and I advised people, and this is mostly, people who are, I got it wrong. I can sit here and try to rationalize it. I could be like, it's kind of like when you're listening to those kids on Bachelor in Paradise, where Blake's trying to explain, like, well, I didn't know that, like, you look terrible, just admit you were wrong and move on. I'm going to do that here. As a matter of fact, if you can find that video, it was one of the best videos I've ever done. Keenan Allen enjoyed it. I held a press conference, admitted I was wrong. So I'm big on Keenan Allen this year. I'm never going to besmirch him again. Now, there is some questions about whether Melvin Gordon is going to be holding out or not. And currently, as we record this early in August, Melvin Gordon has not reported to camp. But that shouldn't hurt Keenan Allen too much one way or the other. The Chargers are more equipped to handle the loss of a player like Melvin Gordon compared to like the Cowboys. The Cowboys, without Melvin Gordon, are kind of like Sublime with Rome. It's like, yeah, I get it. You're playing the same songs, but something's definitely missing. And that's what happens with the Cowboys. But the Chargers, they're more of an ensemble. It's kind of like when Tommy Lee left Motley Crue. You're like, oh, they lost the drummer. Okay. Like, the drummer's great. Don't get me wrong. I would prefer Tommy Lee was there, drumming, doing his little thing. But at the same time, you know what? If he's not there, that offense is still going to be fine. So I have a lot of faith in Keenan Allen. The one thing I do worry about is Phillip Rivers, because he does press a little bit once he's without a stable running back. But they've got Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now at number 8, I'm going to go with Mike Evans, because there's still a lot of question marks about who is going to benefit the most from Bruce Arians being the coach in Tampa Bay. There's a school of thought that O.J. Howard could go out there and have a monster year, that he would play that Larry Fitzgerald type of position where he's lined up in the slot, ready to go. He could take advantage of that. Perhaps they find creative ways to move Mike Evans around. Chris Godwin is still there. They don't have a running game, so you figure they're going to be passing the ball an awful lot. So Mike Evans, to me, then still slots in as a pretty reliable wide receiver 8. I think that's a pretty good ranking for him. I've seen, a lot of teams in a lot of my mocks where I will take a receiver in the first round, and we'll talk about some of those guys who are closer to the number 1 spot on my list. And then coming around with Mike Evans as my wide receiver 2. Now, Mike Evans as a wide receiver 2 is probably the most comfortable spot you can be in fantasy football. If he's your number one, though, it's not the end of the world either, because when we go through our best, worst, and sleepers, we'll also have some guys you can draft there. Now, number 7, I'll just go with Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with this Steelers offense. We do think that, I don't know, there's a fan right there. We do believe that Juju is going to be a dominant wide receiver this year. He has shown ability. He separates well. He can high point footballs. He is a solid wide receiver. And even without Antonio Brown, it's the smallest of sample sizes, but he still went out there and performed admirably when Antonio Brown was not on the field. I have no questions about him coming into this year. And as a matter of fact, when you look at Ben Roethlisberger's personality, he's the kind of jerk who's like, I'm going to prove a point to AB, and I'm going to throw the ball to Juju 500 times this season just to let him know that I don't need him. I make these wide receivers. He was nothing without me. He's got his frostbitten toes or whatever, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So, Juju to me is, again, I'm very comfortable taking him in this spot right there at number 7. I almost like him more than my number 6 guy, and this is a player who is way higher on probably everybody else's board. But I've got Davante Adams right here. The initial reports out of Green Bay are not positive. Things are going wrong. Matt LaFleur is chirping. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers should be on his best behavior, but he can't help himself. That's one of the things that happens with him, is that he can't help himself. At some point, he's going to go out there and he's going to run his mouth, and it's going to be a big issue. And I wish I could talk further about this right now, but we still got 20 minutes to go on this tape. But I won't go too much on Aaron Rodgers right there. The one thing that I am worried about, though, with Davante Adams is that they won't end up finding a way to be as great as they were over the last number of years. Everybody just assumes that Matt LaFleur is going to come in and just rock it and everything's going to be hunky-dory. But remember, that Titans offense last year was, 27th in passing yard? They were very close to the bottom. So there's a lot of issues with the Packers. And I say this, I wish it was going the other way. I wish it was everybody was so effusive with praise on the Green Bay Packers that we could not help but get set up for an epic fail. Now they've got our expectations super low, and then they're going to sneak in and go 14-2, and it's going to be the worst thing ever. But because of that, I have Davante Adams at number 6. Number 5, this is where I'll put Antonio Brown. I moved him down a couple of slots because of what's happening right now with his feet. I would like to see a little bit more out of him in training camp. If he was still playing for the Steelers and he was going through these issues, I could understand that. I could get, oh yeah, that makes sense. That there it is. It's AB. He's going to be automatic, but he's still trying to grasp a new system, get some additional chemistry with Derek Carr. The problem is he's not been on the field, at least not in training camp. So until he comes back, and we've started to see some things happening on Hard Knocks, it's still very early in the process. It could be a situation where he returns in a couple of weeks. He gets a game or two in maybe in the preseason, and then he goes out and crushes it. He's still one of the most talented guys. He is still the second best receiver in NFL history behind Jerry Rice. I know a lot of you Randy Moss stands are going to come out and be like, what about Randy Moss? Like, the consistency that Antonio Brown has had over the last number of years. At least 100 receptions, at least 1,100 yards, at least 8 touchdowns every year since 2013. Nobody's done that in NFL history, not even the great Jerry Rice himself. And when you look at that situation, and I'm being interrupted, I'm literally filming something right now. Rudely, I'm leaving because there's something, yes, I get handed notes all the time and I try to push through them. I'm trying to act as like a professional here and do this video for all of you so you can get your fantasy information up to date. But the thing with AB is I liken him to what Jerry Rice was able to do when he joined the Raiders, and he made a journeyman like Rich Gannon into an MVP. Now, I don't think that Derek Carr is a journeyman by any stretch of the imagination. He's a good NFL quarterback. His 2016 season was MVP worthy even without him. But I do believe that this is going to be a big year for Antonio Brown, even though I had to put him down at the number 5 spot. And again, if this is a guy that I get in the second round, hell, who knows? By the end of training camp, people might be so scared that he ends up falling to you in the third round. I would love that. But yeah, I would love that. I would also love to star in the next Quentin Tarantino picture, but the odds of that happening are probably not great. I'm not ruling it out. I am living, Hollywood adjacent. Who knows? Maybe Tarantino's a fantasy fan. Who knows? You never know. Number 4, Michael Thomas, the guy who just got paid. His holdout was ended. He's back. He's ready to go. Drew Brees has a lot of consistency and chemistry with him. Michael Thomas, these are pretty easy. These are really much how you feel about a player. Do you want to root for Mike Thomas? Like the statistics say that he is going to be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Let's not spend too much time on that. Julio Jones, again, I know a lot of you get so worked up about Julio Jones and his receiving yards. The dude averages 96.7 yards per game throughout his career. And that's close to 100 yards per game. 100 yards per game. It's insane. He is so good. So anybody who wants to sit here and chirp about his touchdowns, fine. Don't draft him. I'll take him. I was doing a league not too long. I was doing the not stupid. That's not polite to the gentleman that I was doing this draft. It was a 4-team draft. You just picked your favorite receiver, and I just picked Julio. OBJ was off the board. But I love Julio. And by the way, OBJ, let me tell you this. And I need to stop this app right now because it will not stop. I need to actually silence my phone. This is the kind of high quality, If I was an editor, I would edit all this stuff out. I would actually have B-roll and stuff so you wouldn't have to look at my face this whole time while I'm talking to you. But this is what we do. So Julio's number 3 for me. I love OBJ this season. Odell Beckham Jr. I see people out there, and any fantasy analyst who's trying to, hey, I want to kind of make a name for myself. I'm going to go out and knock OBJ and act like he's not a great receiver. This dude is one of the best wide receivers on the planet. There's a good opportunity for him to go out there and make a case to be the wide receiver 1. Now, obviously, he battled through some injuries and some other things over the last couple of years. But when we've seen OBJ right, he is one of the most incredible talents outside of outside of AB. So many initials and letters. I can't keep them all straight. I love OBJ. I love him in this situation. I love him with a something to prove mentality. I love him with Baker Mayfield. I don't want to sit here and knock Eli Manning. Actually, I do want to knock Eli Manning just a little bit. Okay, I won't do it, though. Eli Manning, though. We can debate whether he's a Hall of Famer or not. I'm not really going to get into that right now. But the thing is, with Eli, is that he's at the end of his career. Like, it's over. Like, his best days are behind him. He's walking around, and it's weird to be a young man in your career. It's like being Topher Grace. It's like, I was watching Traffic the other day, and you're like, oh my God, I remember when Topher Grace left that 70s show and was like, I'm gonna go do movies or whatever. And you're like, yeah, how'd that work out for you? Not quite what he wanted, but whatever. That's where Eli's at with his career. Is that he's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He played in New York. He's coming from a famous football family. Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame, so I think that it's a pretty safe bet that Eli Manning will be there as well. And that's not to besmirch Kurt Warner, but I think what we've seen is that unless you're Brad Johnson or somebody like that, if you win a Super Bowl, you're probably getting into the Hall of Fame. Sorry, Jim Plunkett. I don't know why. I kind of know why you don't get in, but I don't know why you don't get in. Or Tom Flores, more to the point. Anyways, we're talking about OBJ. This is the first time in his career where he's playing with a quarterback who's on the ascension, a quarterback who's on the rise. And he's playing with a coach who loves to throw the football. And, of course, Todd Monken is there as the offensive coordinator. And I get it. He's not calling the plays, but that's okay. The reason why he was the Ryan Fitzpatrick was so good last year was because Todd Monken's influence. So I love the Browns this year. I'm all in. And, of course, my number 1 guy, DeAndre Hopkins, never drops a football. So what are you going to do? He is the number 1 option right there. That's the thing. Like, I don't understand the Texans. You can never draft a wide receiver 2, and you can never get an offensive line. You had Andre Johnson out there. Could never pair him with somebody truly exceptional. DeAndre Hopkins is going through the same thing, can never build an offensive line. If you can just put somebody down there, get an offensive line, get a number 2 wide receiver, and Kiki Cutie might be that guy. I don't know that it's going to be. But that's my top 10, just to go through it again. Edelman is number 10, followed by Keenan, Mike Evans, Juju, Devontae, AB, Mike Thomas, Julio, OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins. I think I switched one of those. Like, it matters. They're top 10 guys. Some of the best values, guys I'm looking forward to seeing this year is T.Y. Hilton. Believe that Andrew Luck, as long as Andrew Luck is playing, I know that Andrew Luck came out and he's like, you know what? I'm really going to let everybody, like, he's still a little bit, shaken by his shoulder injury. He doesn't trust anybody. Like, I'm not trusting anybody. Like, nope. Not doing that again. It's kind of like when I convinced my daughter to go on Tower of Terror. Actually, it's Guardians of the Galaxy now. When I told her to go on that ride and she did not like it, she was not trusting me for any. We had to go ride the little, but actually she was good. But her cousin, I guess, is probably a better example. We took her on Pirates of the Caribbean. We're like, this is the easiest ride of all time. And then the first little thing goes down and she's like, I'm done with this ride forever. And my niece, I guess, her cousin, had her head buried in my arms, like, for the rest of the ride. Like, there's no more. Like, there's no. And then the second one comes, and you're like, okay, that was legitimately the last one. But that kid would not pick her head up. And I think that that's the way Andrew Luck is approaching this. Is like, anytime he feels a little bit of pain, he's like, yeah, I'm done. No, shut it down. Shut it down. I don't want to miss a full season because I've got some undiagnosed ankle injury or something. So. But assuming that he goes, I think that T.Y. Hilton is going to be a fantastic value. God, he was such a PPR monster last season. I drafted him, and then the defunct NFL Experts League, and everybody thought I was a lunatic. But that dude crushed it every week. He gets so many targets, and I think if Paris Campbell can come in and make an impression from the slot position, that this could end up being pretty good for him. So I do like what is going on with T.Y. Hilton. Tyler Lockett is another player I like. He's starting to get recognized. He snuck into the NFL top 100 list this season. So happy to see him get the recognition that he rightfully deserves. The Seattle Seahawks are going to run the ball an awful lot. And even without Doug Baldwin, they're still going to be able to stretch the football. And Russell Wilson is one of the best deep ball throwers in the league right now. So Tyler Lockett is perfect. Like, it's such a great pick. Like, if you want to go, because, a lot of times now, if you're in the top end of the draft, you're going to have, and you're going running back, you're going to be tempted with some of those second tier running backs as well, coming back on the other side. And if you end up with Tyler Lockett on your team as a wide receiver 1, I would prefer him as my wide receiver 2, but he is still going to go out and give you huge production. Cooper Kupp looks like he's doing very well for the Rams. Love to see him back out there running it. Doesn't seem to have any sort of limitations on him. Will be interesting to see what he does in the preseason games, but there is a case to be made that Cooper Kupp was the legit MVP of the Rams last year. That team was vastly different without him. I don't know if it was so much that teams figured it out, and of course they played teams like the Bears, who kind of shut down the Rams, and of course we saw what the Patriots were able to do to them in the Super Bowl. Believe that contest could have been a little bit different if Cooper Kupp had been out there, because they tried it with Josh Reynolds. Like, Josh Reynolds showed that Cooper Kupp was not just a system guy, a plug-and player or anything like that. He is a legitimate option in this offense. Probably a little bit undervalued because of the injuries, so I'm happy to take him at his current ADP. Same with DJ Moore. Could end up being the best wide receiver out of last year's draft. I'm really excited for Cam Newton to have some options. DJ Moore, his route running is marvelous. If you talk about Matt Harmon, who was Matt Harmon doing the reception perception had DJ Moore charted as one of the best guys in the league. As a matter of fact, if you go right now, the first person who does this, the first person who posts a photo of DJ Moore on their Instagram and uses the hashtag #PickMeRank, the first person that does that, DJ Moore, a photo of DJ Moore, hashtag it, #PickMeRank, make sure this is on Instagram. If you do that, I will give you, the first person who does that, I should say, the first person who does that will get a spot in my new fan league for this coming season, Fantasy League 2. So good luck to anybody who does that. But back to Chris Godwin, another guy. Again, we go back to these Tampa Bay wide receivers. We don't know. We honestly don't know who is going to be the guy who steps up. But you think about it, you think of how this offense is going to be constructed. They're going to have to pass the ball an awful lot. Chris Godwin is going to be a good value. Now, some of the worst players you can draft, and this is based on ADP. I'm going to say Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Excellent wide receivers. Great football players. Probably not going to give you the production that you would expect from where you're drafting them. And the reason why is Kevin Stefanski, the new offensive coordinator. We got a brief glimpse of what he did last year. And during that time, the 3 games, it's a small sample size, but it's indicative of what Mike Zimmer is going to want to do this season. Stephon Diggs was the wide receiver 22. Adam Thielen was the wide receiver 48. And the only reason Stephon Diggs was that high was because he was catching touchdowns. The Vikings will be a run-based team this year. That means less opportunity for Thielen and Diggs, who I love. And if you look at Adam Thielen from week 9 on last year, it is not great. I would stay away. I would actually stay away from Kenny Golladay at his current ADP as well. One of the big reasons, again, because they are going to be running the football. Darrell Bevell loves to run the football. That is his hallmark. That is his calling card. When he was the offensive coordinator from the Seahawks from 2013 to 2017, they ran the ball the 3rd most in the NFL. I just don't think that the production is going to be there for him and Marvin Jones. They're being overdrafted right now. Tyler Boyd is another player. Now that A.J. Green is battling an ankle injury, and we don't know if he's not expected to be available in week 1. Who knows if he comes back by week 4? Is it week 8? But if you look at it historically, Tyler Boyd has not played as well when A.J. Green is not on the field. Don't go into this thinking like, hey, A.J. Green's gone. That means it's all going to be Tyler Boyd. That is not the way that it's worked out in the past. You know, maybe it does with Zach Taylor as the head coach now. But looking at it over the last number of years, that is not a huge option. And by the way, I should point out too, my guy Robert Foster. You know what? He's not having the best training camp, but I'm still hopeful that he's going to go out there and make an impact. I'm not giving up on him. He's still a dynasty stash. He doesn't need to be drafted right now. I know a lot of my mock draft Mondays, I take him right at the very end, and now I'm like, oh, this looks like a wasted pick. I love what they might be able to do in Buffalo. But that leads us to our sleepers, because one of my sleepers, of course, is going to be John Brown. John Brown was not a good fit for Baltimore, especially when Lamar Miller took over. He was playing pretty well with Joe Flacco. The guy's a deep ball threat. Like, that's what you do. Like, it's one of the things, like, you have to be set up for that offense. And having John Brown on that, it's useless. It's like if you gave a toddler an automobile. Like, what are they going to do with this? Like, there's nothing they can do. So now, when he goes to Buffalo, and of course, you know, Josh Allen led the NFL, or was close to leading the NFL in air yards per target. He was amongst the leaders. John Brown was amongst the leaders in air yards per target. Like, this is a perfect match. Like, yes, this is the matchup we've been waiting for. Like, when somebody finally put chocolate and peanut butter together. Like, yes, this is what we needed. Who was the genius who thought of this? And whoever the genius was who thought about putting John Brown with Josh Allen, thank you very much. A couple other sleepers you can look at. Curtis Samuel. The Panthers receiving core is actually becoming pretty legit. I'm a huge fan of both these guys. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, both should have an impact this year. So Curtis Samuel's ADP is creeping up, so you might want to keep an eye on that. Some other guys to take a look at: Geronimo Allison. Aaron Rodgers loves his slot receivers. Geronimo Allison projects as their leading slot target, so keep an eye on him. Somebody to take. I've been drafting him at the end of my draft, so make sure you keep an eye on him. And of course, D.D. Westbrook. I'm a big Marquise Lee guy, but D.D. Westbrook has actually been the player who has emerged over the last couple of weeks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So keep an eye on him. I do believe that Nick Foles is going to be able to sling the ball. And of course, if Leonard Fournette, and everything about Leonard Fournette they're talking about is that this guy is back and ready to go. I don't know. I feel like it's going to end poorly, and I'm going to be sobbing like one of those kids getting jilted on Bachelor in Paradise, but that's the risk that you run. I want to be part of this Jags rejuvenation or whatever it is down with my friends in Duval County, Florida. But thank you guys so much. Tight ends will be coming next week, and make sure you like and subscribe.